hope you're doing well, and welcome to the Horn Broadcasting Channel. My name is Salaam. Across East Africa, a silent political transformation is unfolding inside major cities and urban centers. From Nairobi to Kampala, from Addis Ababa to Dar es Salaam, millions of young urban residents are becoming increasingly frustrated, politically vocal, and socially restless. What was once viewed as isolated public dissatisfaction is now evolving into a regional urban political awakening. The streets of East African cities are becoming the new battlegrounds for economic survival, political accountability, and social justice. Rising protests, online activism, youth-led demonstrations, labor unrest, and anti-government sentiments all signs that urban populations are losing patience with the current political and economic directions of many governments in the region. At the center of all this growing unrest is one painful reality. Life in East African cities is becoming more expensive, more unequal, and more uncertain. One of the biggest reasons behind urban political restlessness is the rising cost of living. Food prices, transport costs, electricity bills, rent, fuel prices, and internet costs have risen sharply across many East African countries. Yet salaries and job opportunities have failed to keep the pace with inflation. For many urban families, survival itself has become a daily struggle. Young professionals with university degrees are unable to secure stable employment. Informal workers are earning less while basic commodities continue becoming more expensive. Middle-class families that once enjoyed financial stabilities are now struggling to maintain their lifestyles. Unlike rural populations that may rely partially on subsistence farming, urban populations depend almost entirely on cash economies. This means inflation hits cities much harder and faster. In cities like Nairobi, Kampala, and Addis Ababa, many citizens now spend most of their income on food, rent, and transport alone. This economic pressure creates anger, frustration, and political resentment towards government perceived as disconnected from ordinary citizens. East Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world. Millions of young people are entering the labor market every year, but economies are not creating enough quality jobs to absorb them. For decades, education was presented as a pathway towards success. Families sacrificed everything to send their families to universities and colleges with hopes of upward mobility. But today, many graduates remain unemployed or underemployed years after completing their studies. This created what many analysts call the educated frustration class, young people who are informed, connected, ambitious, but economically trapped. Urban youths are increasingly questioning the political systems around them. They're asking difficult questions. Why is corruption still widespread? Why do leaders continue living lavishly while citizens suffer? Why are public debts increasing without visible improvement in living standards? Why are jobs concentrated among politically connected elites? Why does economic growth not translate into better lives for ordinary citizens? This frustration is becoming politically dangerous because urban young populations are digitally connected, socially aware, and increasingly fearless. Unlike previous generations, today's urban populations are connected through smartphones, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram. Information spreads instantly. Government narratives are challenged in real time. A single police incident, corruption scandal, or controversial government statement can trigger nationwide outrage within hours. Social media has transformed political mobilization in East Africa. Young people no longer depend entirely on traditional political parties or mainstream media to express themselves. They can organize protests, expose government failures, share evidence of corruption, and build political movements online. This digital revolution has weakened the traditional control governments once had over public narratives. Urban youths are also becoming global political content. They compare their governments with countries elsewhere. They see how other societies debate accountability, governance, jobs, and freedoms. This global awareness increases dissatisfaction with poor leadership and slow reforms at home. East African cities are growing rapidly, but urban infrastructure is struggling to keep up. Millions of people are moving into cities every year searching for opportunities, but urban planning has failed to accommodate this growth. The result is overcrowding, rising rents, informal settlements, traffic congestion, poor drainage system, water shortages, and collapsing public services. For many urban residents, especially youths, owning a home has become almost impossible. Entire generations now feel economically locked out of stable futures. They work hard but cannot afford decent housing, healthcare, quality education for their children, or financial security. This creates a dangerous psychological condition where citizens begin feeling excluded from the economic system itself. When populations lose hope in economic mobility, political anger intensifies. Another major factor behind urban political unrest is the growing distrust toward political elites. Many urban residents increasingly believe the governments are more focused on political survival, ethnic alliances, and elite interests than solving real economic problems. Lavish government spending, corruption scandals, expensive political campaigns, and luxurious lifestyles among leaders create public outrage at a time when ordinary citizens are struggling to survive. Urban populations are becoming less loyal to traditional political identities such as ethnicity, tribe, or political loyalty. Economic hardship is slowly replacing ethnic politics with class-based frustration. This shift is extremely significant. Historically, many East African political systems relied heavily on ethnic alliances and regional loyalties. But urbanization is changing this political formula. In cities, people from different communities face the same economic struggles. Shared suffering is creating new forms of political consciousness. In several East African countries, government responses to protests and dissent have often involved police crackdowns, arrests, internet restrictions, and intimidation. But these heavy-handed responses are sometimes worsening public anger instead of controlling it. Urban populations, especially young people, increasingly interpret aggressive security responses as evidence that governments are unwilling to listen to public concerns. This creates a cycle of confrontation. Economic hardship leads to protests. Protests leads to crackdowns. Crackdowns creates more anger. Anger fuels greater political resistance. Over time, this cycle can destabilize entire political systems if reforms are not introduced. Perhaps the most important development is the emergence of a new urban political generation across East Africa. This generation is more educated, more digitally connected, more globally exposed, less patient with corruption, less loyal to old political structures, more willing to challenge authority publicly. Unlike older generations shaped by post-independence politics, many young urban East Africans are focused primarily on governance performance, economic opportunity, accountability, and dignity. They are increasingly defining politics through economic realities rather than liberation narratives or historical loyalties. The political future of East Africa may largely depend on how governments respond to urban frustration over the next decade. If leaders address unemployment, corruption, housing, inflation, and governance concerns seriously, urban population could become powerful engines of economic growth and democratic stability. But if economic pressures continue worsening while political systems remain unresponsive, East African cities will witness deeper instability, recurring protests, social unrest, and political polarization. Urban populations are no longer politically silent. The streets, social media platforms, universities, transport sectors, and informal settlements of East Africa are becoming centers of political pressure and civic awakening. And as urban populations continue growing rapidly across the region, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The future political direction of East Africa will likely be decided not in rural strongholds, but in the restless cities themselves. If you've got any comment or contributions, please do so in the comment section. My name is Mtalam Kosia, and this is the Horn Broadcasting Channel.